Hello folks, Red Labor here. I'm going to talk about something very, very controversial today, and that is 9/11. Yeah, it's going to be the 11th anniversary of 9/11 very soon. And there's been a blame game of sorts played over the years. You hear conservatives say, damn liberals, they want the terrorists to win. And you hear the anti-war folks saying, "Oh no, the Republicans are trying to get us in a war in the Middle East because they want to murder on the basis of oil." And then there's someone like me out there that's willing to adequately explain why we have a war on terrorism today. And guess what, folks? I'm going to blame both liberals and conservatives for this. And I'm going to praise a few liberals and conservatives at the same time. And somehow, when I do this, I'm going to be called a communist and a neoconservative at the same time by some of the most fierce critics of my commentary. But let me start. The 9/11. The World Trade Center getting attacked, Pentagon, the brave people on, I believe, United Flight 93, I believe it was, that fought against the bastards that tried to crash the plane in the White House, and their plane ended up in Pennsylvania. Well, you know why we had that problem happen on 9/11? Let's go back to the 1979-1980 time period. The Soviets went into Afghanistan. We all thought, oh, those big bad Soviets. Keep in mind, I'm anti-communist, what I'm about to say, so bear in mind that. The Soviets went into Afghanistan, and it was not so much an invasion, it was a request by a radical left-wing government in Afghanistan for the Soviets to intervene because they were fighting against the rebels trying to topple their government. Well, to make this short and sweet, the United States decided, well, big bad Soviets invading the poor people of Afghanistan. Well, it goes more like this. When this left-wing government took over Afghanistan in the 70s, while certainly not a perfect society and with pro-Soviet sympathies, which makes it bad enough, one needs to understand when it comes to Middle Eastern countries with an Islamic-based culture, and a Soviet-backed government with communist political system. Compared to the communist system, which was heavily Soviet influenced, it's going to be more westernized. That meant that education was available to people and women were granted equality. I am not defending communism in the slightest when saying this. I'm just saying it is what it is. Compare that to an Islamic religious system that wanted to force women to wear burqas from head to toe, that sort of thing. Given the two choices, some things are worse than communism, and I would have to say that extreme militant Islam would be worse. Now, some people will call that Muslim bashing, but no, not really, because you can have a Muslim state and be a democracy at the same time. Indonesia being an example. Imperfect as it can be at times, Turkey has some semblance of being a free society, but that's a little more controversial and debatable. But the point is that being a free society and being predominantly Islamic can go hand in hand. More times than not, it's the other way around, and most countries which are predominantly Islamic are, are not free societies. Well, so I'm blaming Jimmy Carter first because Jimmy Carter, boycotted the 1980 Winter Olympics because of what the Soviets did, and he was starting to use the CIA to back the rebels in Afghanistan. But it was Ronald Reagan that really got the ball rolling, and what was on perception a noble cause. Ronald Reagan was dead wrong when he says that these were freedom fighters, the rebels. I remember being 18 years old, watching 60 Minutes in 1987 with my dad. Now, my dad is no liberal. My dad is basically an old Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan Republican. But my dad's also a free thinker too, in spite of where me and him would disagree. And I was discovering my political identity as someone on the left back then. And we generally respect each other's views, even when we disagree. But he and I were watching the news, and there was a rebel taking an anti-aircraft missile launcher, aiming it up into the sky. He fired it. That rocket blew up that Soviet plane, and my dad said, son, that rebel, everybody sympathized with that rebel, and he's made to look like the victim here, but I can guarantee you some things are worse than Soviet communism, and that rocket launcher will one day be turned against us. It will one day be turned against us by that, by these same people. Turned out he was correct. It wasn't a rocket launcher. They were airplanes turned into cruise missiles that made the Twin Towers go down on 9/11. My point is that you're going to do the blame game. As I said, Ronald Reagan, the Reagan administration's objectives in Afghanistan is what caused the Soviets to withdraw and eventually have the Taliban in the mid-1990s take over Afghanistan and have it so where Afghanistan were housing in the Al-Qaeda network, which made 9/11 possible. And it's called blowback. And some people out there, like Congressman Ron Paul, has pointed this out, and he is just, some people on the right and the neocons and all these people, they'll be like, look at Ron Paul and think, oh, well, he's no better than the people from Code Pink and all these loony left liberals protesting against the war, against our president, George W. Bush. Well, that's really what happened there with 9/11. And that is the cause. Going into Afghanistan back then might have been okay, considering that it was Afghanistan that invaded us. Going into Iraq, however, was just stupid. I mean, there were no weapons of mass destruction, and anybody with a clear, objective mind would know that Saddam Hussein, as much of a son of a bitch as he was, had nothing to do with 9/11. Had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein were like sworn enemies of each other. And you basically have the secular pan-Arab nationalism of people like Saddam Hussein and the various Ba'athist movements in the Middle East versus the Islamists that supports the kind of shit that the Al-Qaeda network supports and the Taliban. My point I'm trying to make is this, they're not, when you're doing this war against terror, too many people on the right do a broad brush stroke on and write people off and everything. Now, take another area not connected really with 9/11, but it focused on the Hezbollah attack on northern Israel in 2006. And I have people, a knee-jerk leftist that I'm going to go after right now for a second, and they just want to have an excuse to bash Israel for any reason. And when Hezbollah fired rockets into northern Israel and Israel responded, they're like, well, how dare Israel respond when they get attacked? Yeah, they had every right to attack. And, and leftists that have this mentality in your politically correct little mindset, keep this in mind. Hezbollah not only hates Israel, but guess who they're fighting in southern Lebanon? They're fighting the Lebanese Communist Party. Now, I'm not a communist, and I'm anti-communist. I'm a socialist, not a communist. But who's the lesser evil between the Lebanese Communist Party and Hezbollah? Of course, it is the Lebanese Communist Party. And I support Israel, and I support the Lebanese Communist Party in both in their campaigns to wipe out Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And so that's where I stand on that. But folks, you have too many people on the right that wants to sit there and scapegoat Muslims and Muslims this and Muslims that, he must be a Muslim, that kind of attitude. And then you have people on the left that would be like, leave the Muslims alone. Islam is a religion of peace. Bollocks to both sides on that one. I defend the civil liberties of people who are Muslims here. Don't support Sharia law, but I support their civil liberties, and I don't think it's right to have the government officially monitoring Muslim Americans, just on the basis of the fact that they're Muslim. And I don't believe also in sitting there and doing the politically correct thing and acting like that you're critical of any aspect of Islam on a political or theological basis, that you're an anti-Muslim bigot and you're a racist. And the racist part's kind of ridiculous too, because Muslims tell them on all colors. Most of the people that attacked the World Trade Center and most of the Muslim terrorism in the world, these people are white. So, why sit there and use the race card on that question? So, folks, as I was saying, some things are worse than communism, and I'll say Islamic jihadism is worse. And and we should have let the Soviets win in Afghanistan. We wouldn't have the problems we had today. Yes, it's wrong to go and invade Iraq, and we financially cannot afford to go and invade Iran. And there are ways. Iran should be considered a non-starter, because I firmly believe that the people in Iran will themselves rebelled against Ahmadinejad's government, and I sort of foresee in the next 5 years Iran having a new government, and the new government will be democratic. But here's the thing, folks, and this is not anti-Americanism being said on my part. The United States really do not need to be involved, because anything that looks like American involvement will end up as blowback against us. So on this, on early September 2012, I thought I'd give you a little bit of food for thought when it comes to 9/11. Please feel free to comment, and happy Labor Day to you all.